Welcome to the Echo Effect podcast, where we share stories of exceptional practices that result in extraordinary results. The stories shared on the Echo Effect podcast are about positively impacting people. The guests on this show are those who are either the receiver or the giver of the positive impact or exceptional practice. And they're here to tell us their stories, to inspire others, and remind us that even though we sometimes don't realize it, we do make a positive impact. By speaking our stories and putting it out into the world, we create what I call the Echo Effect. I am Elaine Simpson, your host of the Echo Effect podcast, and today I have Alana Hill, who is also a fellow member of the National Speakers Association and known as an international change leadership expert, dedicated to helping people lead change in their lives and their organizations. She's an engineer and project leader who serves a variety of industries through speaking, writing, and consulting. She loves traveling, being outdoors, and exploring world cultures. She also enjoys running and using her gifts to bless others, especially parents. She is active servant leader in a professional association, her church, and her community. Like many of you, we have stories to share. And now, Alana, will you share with us your story?
Hi, Elaine. Yeah, thank you. I have, I have so many stories because I think when we pay attention to what's happening in life, we end up having so many, but there's one that just really resonates with me that really goes down as one of my favorite stories. And this story actually has some background, and I'll give a little texture to it. I moved around a lot as a child, which is no surprise that I've become a change leadership expert, right? So I moved around a lot, and I was on move number, let's say 10, but I was only 9 years old. I changed schools. This was in the 4th grade, and I was now at my 3rd school in the same school year. I wasn't a military brat. There was no altruistic reason for all of the moves. Just, I don't know, people just kept getting uncomfortable. There were a variety of circumstances. But in this particular move, I was getting a little weary. I was 9 years old, getting on pre-adolescence, and I'd started at this school on the outskirts of Seattle, Washington. My family is originally primarily from Houston, so lived primarily in Houston, moved to Seattle. So there was a bit of a culture shock that happened in the beginning of the 4th grade. That was move number 1 of the 4th grade. Then there was the 2nd move, and then here I am on the 3rd one. So I'm a little weary, and now I don't even want to meet people, because what's the point? And to add insult to injury in this whole situation, we didn't ride a school bus. We didn't go to the bus or the school right down the street. We rode the city bus about an hour away. So we were actually going all the way almost to Olympia, if you look on a map of Washington. So it was quite a ride on the bus. And so if you've decided you don't want to talk to anybody, it's a pretty long, silent ride. Well, I'd had this encounter with a classmate where I had a box of crayons, and you know, when you're 9 years old, a box of crayons is a really big deal. I had a 64 box of crayons, which would have made me a superstar in the school, but nobody knew me because I was quiet. Well, this girl kept wanting to borrow my crayons, and I would, of course, it wasn't even really a question. It was like, can I borrow your crayon? As she reached for a crayon, right? Can I borrow a crayon? As she reached for a crayon.
Wait for an answer.
Yeah. Well, and then she broke them. She kept breaking them.
That's like the biggest number one rule. You don't break the crayons.
Yeah. And I'm 9, and this 64 box of crayons is like, that's all I have, right? So I finally muster up the courage to tell her, no, you can't borrow my crayons, when she asks. So she reaches and asks, as she normally does. And I said, no, you can't borrow my crayons. What? What do you mean I can't borrow your crayons? I want to meet you outside. We all know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
So I met her outside. I didn't have any choice. I had to go outside to go to the bus, to get on this hour-long bus ride that I was already dreading. And now I have to encounter this person who wants to confront me about my selfishness about crayons. Come on. So she sees me and she pushes me, and she pushes me and then she slaps me in my face. Pretty aggressive stuff here. And I don't know what's going on in her household, but this is behind a crayon. We have to remember the context. It's a crayon. So she slaps me. I was 9 years old. I was in the 4th grade. Of course, I was embarrassed, and I didn't really know anybody to I don't know, have anybody have my back or to feel the confidence that you feel with the strength in numbers. So I just kind of grabbed my face and I made my way to the Metro bus, which thankfully was right there waiting for me. And I got on the bus and there were tears streaming down my face. And well, there was this one girl on the bus, and like I said, I didn't really talk to many people, but Rudy kind of made it, she would talk to me and I would talk back, and she was kind of a rough and tumble tomboy, and nobody really messed with her. Well, I get on the bus and Rudy sees me crying and she goes, "What happened to you?" And I said, "She slapped me because I wouldn't let her play with my crayons." What? Now, mind you, we've got this hour bus ride. She looks at the bus driver and she says, "Wait a minute." And she storms off the bus and she storms up to this girl and she says, "If you ever lay a hand on her again, I'm going to get off this bus and I'm going to kick your butt." And I'm pretty sure we were in the 4th grade, so I think she kept it at "kick your butt." But
Clean, did she?
yeah, she kept it clean. But she stood up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it meant the world to me. Not only of course my face was still hurting, but just knowing that she stood up for me. And she didn't know me that well. It's not like I was her sister and she was defending her little sister or defending her cousin. She was defending this girl who rides on the bus with her who had said maybe a few words to her. And man, that always stuck with me. That was in the 4th grade and that always resonated with me. So much so I posted an article, I think it was last year, be like Rudy. And so it just really stuck with me. I was reflecting on that story one day, but be like Rudy, be that person that sticks up for somebody that you see. And so how it impacted me was that it reminded, I'll never forget what it felt like, first of all, to have my face slapped. I'll never forget the pain of that. I'll never forget the humiliation of, because it doesn't take kids long to circle around what they think is going to be a fight, like no time at all.
Right.
So it took no time for them to circle around. So I remember the humiliation of looking and realizing that not only did this just happen, but it just happened in front of, half of 4th grade. So it was embarrassing. It was hurtful. But then there she was. And it's not like I had to say, "Hey, will you please go get her for me?" She just saw my pain and she wanted to step in and be part of the solution for my pain. And who doesn't want that in their life?
Right. Especially, with everything that's going on right now. Yeah. It's those types of acts are what we need in our world today.
Yeah.
People standing up for each other without being asked, without expecting anything in return, but doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't look at me and say, "Oh, your face doesn't hurt," or, "Oh, she didn't dismiss it. She immediately got off the bus. And the thing I love when I tell the story to kids, she didn't defend me by being what she despised. Mm-hmm. She didn't become the bully to stop the bully. Now, had she needed to, she would have met, but her being forceful was enough, because quite frankly, and we know from behavioral science that bullies often, if you bark at a bully, that's oftentimes that's the end of it. Right. And that was the end of it. And so I went on, and the interesting thing too is it was already towards the end of the school year. Who wants to change schools that late in the school year? Yeah. So it was kind of like, oh, let me ride it out. But I was actually able to ride out what was probably like the last grading period quite fondly. The school had like a circus in the school. And so it's like my memories from that day on were very positive. Mm-hmm. And so it was amazing the emotional shift that it had for me too, being in this place, being in kind of this darkness of just not knowing anybody. 9 years old is a very sociable time for a little girl. And the me that shows up is just an older version of 9-year-old me. I've always been outgoing. I've always been the fun, outgoing nerd. And so there I was wanting to be my fun, outgoing nerd self, but I really had nobody to be outgoing with because I didn't know anybody. And you just kind of get tired of saying, "Hi, my name is," So the fact that, again, without much relational connection, she thought enough of my humanity to speak up for me, and that means the world. And so I love sharing that story, and I love how it impacted me.
Yeah, that is a great story. So when she did that and you felt this, wow, first of all, I'm guessing that until that happened, you almost feel like you're not relevant or you're invisible. and here somebody steps up and defends you,
Yeah.
doesn't really know you. So what was your relationship with Rudy after this
Oh my
event?
goodness. I mean, if she had dirt on her shoe, I would have happily wiped it off. I mean, it was, I mean, and she was, well, she couldn't have been a year older than me because the school went to fifth grade. I think we might have been in the same grade. She may have been, you know, maybe a few months older than me. But she kind of took on this almost mentoring role. I mean, like when we got back to the school after that, you know, she began to introduce me around to some more people. And I think for her too, she saw maybe where she hadn't been hospitable for me before, you know, because there was no one really to introduce me around. And we were literally on that bus for an hour.
Oh. That right there is enough, right?
Yeah,
you
that, you
had
know,
me at
and
an hour.
and it was a public bus. So I mean, there were like, I'd say regular people, right? There were adults that would get on, and so the kids would kind of stay in one section. It was the oddest situation, but we really became bonded after that.
Mm-hmm.
And the weird thing is, because of the zoning, I didn't get a chance to go back to that same school, which would have given us a chance to even more build our relationship. But and 3 blocks to a 9-year-old, or maybe 4 or 5 or whatever we'll say, is still quite a bit of distance. So she lived
Right.
far enough away from me to where I didn't like really see her much after that.
Mm-hmm.
But the times that I did encounter her in the immediate aftermath were, I mean, I just had so much gratitude. It really made me, you know, pay close attention to having that relationship and having relationships around me. Because like I said, I kind of gotten to the point where I'm not really going to talk to many people. And, you know, it didn't take me long to see that there's really no value in isolating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you know, it's one of those stories that when I unpack it, there's so many nuggets in it, you know, that being one. And then, you know, her just seeing my pain and responding empathically to my pain, and me not having to, you know, direct her or, you know, insist at how horrible this was. She saw it all on my face, and her movements from then on were her own.
That's awesome. So what happened to the bully? Come on, you know I got to ask that.
Yeah, you know, well, so here's the funny, like, ironic thing about that. So as I mentioned, that the next school year, because of rezoning, I ended up going to a different school. I went to the school in our neighborhood, which is where I met the person who, in the story I was going to originally share, which I'll touch on,
Mm-hmm.
which was now, I was in the 5th grade. I was in a community school down the street. So I think I rode the bus, but it was a very, very short bus ride, very short. But my teacher had spina bifida, and she had the feet of like a 2-year-old. As a matter of fact, that's when they stopped growing. And so I know this because she shared. And it was, so having gone from being supported, and then being moved to a school where I had a teacher, she was very self-sufficient. She didn't necessarily need me, but it gave me a level of empathy that my teacher never had to ask, you know. And so being a 5th grader in K through, you know, you're the top of the food chain or whatever, so you have to be more mature. And it just, I really jumped in my level of maturity and leadership at that point. In the 5th grade, I think it was really the first year that I found my teacher expressing to me, you know, what a leader I was, and you know, good job at being a leader. I sat right up in the front, you know, fun outgoing nerd, I told you, sat right up in the front, and loved every moment of when she would tell a story. But she was incredibly impactful for me because I saw the resilience in her every single day. And, you know, she was on crutches, and like I said, she had the really small feet, and she'd shared, you know, that she had spina bifida. Otherwise, as a 5th grader, I wouldn't know what that was.
Right.
And I didn't have anyone in my family with a disability. So it was really the exposure to that. And because we had such a fond relationship, she was literally the teacher that pegged me as a smart kid. And then I went to smart school. So it was a whole nother school change. But all those, you know, the bullying, the overcoming that prepared me for that. Where I'm going is then, as comfortable as I was in that school, the very next year, I ended up having to transfer to another school because it was the smart school. Yeah, no. Are you exhausted with me?
Yes, I am. Stay in one
So
spot,
it's a smart
please.
school. And get this. So now I'm comfortable in the community school with my teacher, who I love. And actually, I misspoke. It was a K through 6.
Okay.
So the next year, I was going to be the top of the food chain. Looking forward to that. They test me. They said, oh, just send her to the smart school. The smart school starts at 6th grade. And you know what? The smart school is by the other school, an hour away.
Oh my.
Yeah. So now I'm back on an hour-long bus ride. I've got my voice though, so I'm not necessarily afraid of meeting. And these are all new students. But what's interesting, when you asked me what happened to the bully, we were driving to this new school one day and I looked out the window and there she was. And I remember like wanting to yell at her because I felt like I had my voice, but I could see her out the window and I'm like, I'll never forget who she is, because I'll never forget how she made me feel. As Maya Angelou said, you'll forget what people say, you'll forget what they do, but you'll never forget how they made you feel. And
Absolutely.
I would never forget how she made me feel, but I would never forget how Rudy made me feel. And that's what I really take away from that story. But
so, based on your experience with Rudy, what Rudies have you done for others?
So it started in high school. I guess once you kind of get to the part of being an upperclassman, and kind of looking for those mentoring opportunities. So I've always enjoyed mentoring people who were younger than me, who were maybe less comfortable where they were. And then certainly when I went to college, as an African American female engineering student at Texas A&M, which is a predominantly white male university, I went with a voice. And I think that was a really big difference. And I don't think that I would have, and of course, through college and through the maturation that happens at that time in your life, I found more of my voice. But when I was there, I had a voice. And I still attribute that, even going back to that season between Rudy, my teacher, and then seeing the girl out the window, all of that it was such a pivotal moment, even in my childhood, of having a voice and seeing how I can use it. And so when I was in college, I was an advocate for social justice. I was one of the students who chartered the NAACP on campus. And so in our current environment, I've been really reminded of some of the activism that I did in those days, and that didn't stop. And then I went and started my career in the oil field. So I was still the only, right? So I was still in many spaces the only African American, sometimes the only woman, and so advocating for changes in HR policy, advocating for equity in our workplace, and as a project manager, advocating, ensuring that our projects have proper alignment, and just really having a voice. And really, as Dr. Covey says, balancing courage and consideration, and always reflecting back on that, knowing how important it is to be courageous.
Wow. So Rudy had a pretty big impact on you.
She did.
Do you think when she stood up for you that she had any idea the impact that she was going to make on your life?
No, I'm sure she didn't. I mean, and again, because it was and when I say emotional response, we think negatively of an emotional response as if it's irrational, but it was something that she did because her gut told her to, because she responded, because empathy moves you to compassion, and she felt what I felt, and she moved on my behalf. So I don't think that she thought that the bully that she stopped was going to have that big of an impact on my life. But then here I was, being able to finish the rest of that school year, not afraid that this girl would do anything to me, because I'm really not. Right. So, and it didn't embolden me to do anything ugly. It just made me feel more comfortable in my own skin. And that was really, really helpful. I mean, at 9 years old, or she may have been 10, I don't think she ever thought it would have the kind of ripple effect. Here I am decades later, and I still talk about it.
That's incredible. And studies show the things that happen to us between the ages of 8 and 12 are, pretty much form who we are as adults. Yep. So, kudos to Rudy, because she contributed to where you are today by providing that type of support and recognizing you and accepting you. And not allowing you to be pushed around by somebody else. So honestly, that's what the echo effect is. It's paying it forward without even realizing it. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, we don't realize how our actions impact others, whether or not negatively or positively. And this show is all about positivity, so we'll just focus on that. But, there are things that we all go through, and it can be something you don't even recognize, right? It could be that somebody stops at an intersection when they had the right of way, but stops because for whatever reason they do, and your car doesn't have brakes and it's not working and you go through the inside. I mean, there are impacts that we don't even know exist because we don't physically experience them directly. So when something like that does happen, we need to draw attention to it and focus on that and say thank you, because that's what, we want to encourage that good behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, because it has such a positive effect on me kind of in the short term, it impacted me for the long term because it modeled something for me that I wanted to continue to emulate. And because too, with her being, like I said, I keep emphasizing her being just slightly older than me. I had this already kind of built-in respect for her. Mm-hmm. So, and everybody else did apparently, because she's talking about
she had some presence.
Like the little crowd split, here comes Rudy. Yeah, he made Rudy mad. And it reminds me of the movie The Bodyguard, which was, the big movie in the 80s, right? And the guy had the bodyguard. So the funny thing is, then after that, she was kind of my bodyguard. Nobody else would mess with me. And, I was the new kid and I got to, ride out the rest of the school year. And so, and one of the things that I think was when we talk about that time frame in our lives, I was already, I told you, I'd moved a lot, and then you see all these more moves, and we weren't done. We still moved some more. So I had quite a tumultuous upbringing. And so her stepping out of all of that was going on and being the light was incredibly helpful. And the light shines brightest in the darkness. And so it's another reason I think that I remembered her so much, because it was a really tough time. So we just never can have
never know
someone else for today and for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a wonderful story, and I'm really appreciative of you sharing that with us. I know we had some technical issues starting out. For those of you that don't know, it was kind of crazy. We also got the memo to wear the blue today, so we're at least color coordinating, which was not intentional, but it looks good.
I know.
So if you could leave our audience with one thought, one important thought about positively impacting others, what would it be?
It would be never miss a chance to be the light in someone else's darkness. And it can be from the smallest act, could be from pushing a cart for them in the parking lot to soothing a baby at checkout while mom looks for her change. Just never miss an opportunity, because you never know how big that small thing is going to be to someone else.
I love that. Never miss an opportunity. I love that. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I love your story. And, it's inspirational to know that even at such a young age, a 9 or 10-year-old can positively impact other people's lives. I think when I thought about this podcast, I was thinking adults, and, you've enlightened me and helped me to think more about the younger people in our world and how they positively impact others. So thank you. And thank you for being on our show. I really appreciate it. And it was great talking with you. And thank you for being patient with some of my technical difficulties earlier today. For those of you that are viewing this, if you would like to be a guest and share your story or stories on our show, please email Brandy Bean at B as in boy, EANE at yourechoeffect.com. Again, that's B as in boy, EANE at yourechoeffect.com to schedule your interview. Thank you.